everyone, and welcome to our corporate sponsor highlight series of JAX REIA. I am Nasreen Ali, president of Jacksonville Real Estate Investors Association here in Jacksonville, Florida. And today I am joined by my guest, Gonzalo Corzo of Cash Geeks. We are joining you from River and Post, one of the trendiest rooftops here in Jacksonville. So, Gonzalo, how are you?
Great.
Good.
Great.
Good to have you.
Yes, have a lot of stories up in this rooftop.
Do
Yes,
you?
yeah.
Unfortunately, so do I, but
Yeah.
we won't share them right now. So, Cash Geeks, you guys have a big presence in Jacksonville, at JaxReia certainly. You're one of our biggest sponsors. Tell us what Cash Geeks does for the community. What is Cash Geeks about?
Yeah. So Cash Geeks started in 2017, okay? And we mainly specialize now in buying houses. So Cash Geeks has evolved over the years, right? We mainly started out wholesaling, primarily focused only on wholesaling. And what that means is we supplied a lot of the housing inventory to local investors. So our job at Cash Geeks as wholesalers was to find off-market discounted inventory that other investors could purchase and make money from. And so that is how we got really well connected with the community, because we became the supplier, for lack of better words, to the investors.
Sure.
And as we grew and expanded, we realized that we had a lot of investor demand, but not enough inventory. We couldn't find enough houses ourselves. So that grew the business to work a lot with other wholesalers. So we do a lot of what we call joint venturing with other wholesalers because of the buyer demand that we have. And so because of that, that also allowed us to make a bigger impact in the community, because we were working with other wholesalers, newer wholesalers sometimes, where they were just getting started, didn't know how to find a buyer or didn't have a buyer's list. So we bridged that gap. So because we became the suppliers of inventory locally and we helped other wholesalers, we kind of made a good name for ourselves, and our business relied on the community, essentially.
Right. Okay. So you joint ventured with other wholesalers to help increase your supply for acquisitions. Now, you weren't always in real estate, kind of throwing back. I believe you were in law enforcement. So how did you end up entering into the real estate world?
Yeah, so I wasn't in law enforcement yet. I was going to school to go into law enforcement. So I was trying to get a criminology degree.
Okay.
And while I was in college, my second semester in college, I decided to drop out of college and try this real estate investing thing. So before that, I was really just a college kid. I got into real estate when I was 19.
So what introduced you? What made you want to decide to even consider dropping out?
So my older brother became a realtor when I was 18.
Okay.
And at the time that he became a realtor, he also started investing in real estate. And so he took me to a real estate event. It was in California, and it was one of those seminars that teach you to earn passive income in real estate, right, by rentals. From that event, one of the things that they talked about at that event was join your local REIA.
Oh.
And so I went to my local REIA, JAX REIA, and I feel like I'm a pretty smart individual, and so I was able to put very quickly the pieces of everything I will ever need to be successful in real estate is here at the REIA, right? And so I could tell it all made sense on why they emphasized join your local REIA.
Okay.
Because you need to find realtors, you need contractors, you need lenders, you need deal flow, you need insurance. Like, how do you find all these things when you're on your own? If you join your local REIA, you instantly get connections. And so that was the thing. At this point I was 19, and getting into real estate as a 19-year-old, the first thing is like, where are all my resources going to come from? When I went to the REIA, I met a lot of people, and I quickly saw, hey, this is what I need to be spending my time on. I didn't know that I was going to start making money immediately. My first thought was, if I'm spending 8 hours a day, 10 hours a day going to college, what if I put those 8 to 10 hours a day in real estate? I'm not making money going to college anyway.
Right.
It's costing me money.
Right.
Why don't I pay this $200 a year for the REIA,
Right.
which is nothing, and I can go to as many events,
Right.
I can pick as many people's brains as that they're willing to give me. And so that is where I decided I was able to convince my parents to give me 6 months to put college on the side, and in 6 months I had to earn income in real estate. And if I could do that, then I could stay out of college. If I didn't do that, I had to go back to college.
So how crucial was being at the REIA a part of your plan?
I mean, at first, it wasn't really part of my plan.
Right.
My first seminar just said, go to the REIA.
Okay.
So I wasn't expecting the REIA to be this breakthrough moment for
Okay.
me, right? They said, go to your REIA. I looked up the REIA, went to the event. And that is where it kind of made sense. When I first went to the REIA, it was my first, my first ever event at the REIA, believe it or not, was a trade show. That was the first event. And so I was just blown away.
Right.
I was like,
Everybody you
and then-
need all at
correct.
once.
And the guest speaker at that trade show at the time was Ron LeGrand.
Uh-huh.
So I went to the event, started meeting all these vendors, and I was
Sure.
like, oh, this makes sense.
Right.
And then heard Ron LeGrand talk, and then, I saw, at this point I had already gone to see on YouTube, right, all these programs and all these courses you could buy are like 15 grand, 30 grand, 20 grand, whatever. And so the first thing that I see was joining JaxReia. They had a membership, annual membership, and it was, I think it was like $300, it was like $299 or $399 or what, I don't remember exactly what the cost was. And I just remember at that moment thinking wow, you guys have all these events that I can come to every week, go to a class, all these meetups, and it's
Right.
only like $300 for the year.
Yeah.
And I was trying to internally figure out if I should drop this $10,000 on this program. I was like, let me do this first.
Sure. Yeah.
And so because of that, I instantly pieced together that everything that I will ever need is in this room.
Oh, wow.
And because of that, that's how I saw the REIA, was everything that I need is in the REIA. That is why I gave the REIA also so much of my time. Meaning, there's events all the time, right? And everybody's like, oh, the REIA has so much going on, which is amazing. And so I was at everything.
And you also served on the board, didn't you?
I did serve on the board.
Right.
Yep, that came later on. But in the beginning, I was just a sponge, and I wanted to be at every single thing that the REIA had.
Right.
Because in my mind, that is where I was going to learn or make money.
Right.
And I have 6 months to convince my parents
To prove yes.
for me to not go back to college.
Right.
And so I went to everything. There was no event that happened that I wasn't at least for the first year.
So how did you convince them? What happened at the end of 6 months?
At the end of 6 months, I was just a different individual. I think it was more of who I became in those 6 months as opposed to what did you do?
Right.
In those 6 months, my parents saw me move out of the house, because I originally wasn't from Jacksonville. So the reason I ended up in Jacksonville is because I was working for an investor in St. Augustine who was doing all of his deals in Jacksonville.
Ah.
And so really it went from me wanting to learn about real estate and go to and figure out this real estate thing, but I was still living in my parents' house, a college kid with the mentality of a college kid, right? And so once I got into real estate, I was like, I'm moving out. So immediately that kind of forced me to become a man in a way.
Right.
And so because of that, after those 6 months, I mean, it was very clear, like 2-3 months in, they were like, okay, this is gonna make sense,
I see.
right?
So
but I think it
Jacksonville was new to you.
Jacksonville was completely new to me,
I
and
see.
that's also why I depended so much on the REIA,
Hmm.
because I didn't know real estate, and because I moved to Jacksonville, I also didn't know Jacksonville, so I didn't know anything really.
Right. Yeah.
I didn't know zip codes. I didn't know areas. You know,
That's
I would go to the
crazy.
REIA events and I'd be like, oh
Right.
yeah, on the west side. I don't know where the west side is. I'm gonna find out.
Right.
You know, so that's why I was also so dependent on the REIA, because I didn't know anything about Jacksonville.
So what's the first deal you did?
First deal I did was a wholesale deal in Palm Coast, and I found the deal through a mailer. I found the seller through a mailer, and I found the buyer through a bandit sign. Those signs that you put on the road. I put like a 3-2 investor special. I put like fixer upper special, and I put signs out all around the house that I was trying to sell. And somebody driving around called us, met us at the house, and I'll never forget, because I was working for the company at that time. So we made $8,000. I made $800. I was 19, closed my first deal.
Yeah.
I thought I was rich.
Yeah, yeah.
And I was like, this works. This
So
is
how long after moving out of the house did you do that deal?
I would say like 4 months.
Okay.
Yeah,
All right.
4 months. Yep.
Yeah, so I want to kind of, if you can think of a challenge that's real estate related, that you could kind of step us through a challenge and how you got through it.
Yeah. I would say that there's a lot of challenges that I've had in real estate deals. I'm trying to think of a good example of really what I want to highlight, and this is something that I learned early on in my personal development days, right? I listen to a guy named Tony Robbins a lot, and he always says that the most successful individual is not the smartest, it's not the strongest, it's not the whatever, it's the most resourceful. The most resourceful individual is the most successful. And so I learned that very early on. And for me, I solve almost all of my problems without me having to make a decision. I just lean into my resources. So what does that mean is every time I ran into an obstacle in real estate, I would just call anybody that I met at the REIA. One of those people early on is a gentleman named Greg Brady.
Yes.
Greg Brady and I were very close when I first got started. And he, I think it's because I just would always offer to take him out to eat. So he was like, yeah, let's do it. I like free lunch.
You can pick my brain.
Yeah, and so me and Greg got pretty close because I would just take him out to eat, and then I would get to pick his brain for an hour. And then any time in between that I would run into a challenge, I would really only have to phone call maybe 2 or 3 REIA members by the time I got either the answer that I needed or connected, or they would say, oh, you need to talk to, you know, this such and such title company, or you need to talk to this attorney, call them. And so I ran into a lot of challenges, real estate related, squatters, evicting people, separating lots, taking on properties that have liens, city code violations.
Right.
You know, I remember doing my first deal here in Jacksonville that had like a rolling fine. And so in Jacksonville, if you don't know, the city will start to put you'll get code violations and they'll turn into liens, and if you don't pay those liens, they turns into a court date. And if you don't go to court, then every day from that court, they start charging you $50 a day. They don't tell this to the people, to the owners, or maybe they do, but the owners don't really read the stuff that they're getting. And so when you try to sell that house 5 years later, now you have a rolling fine of $800,000. And so I just remember like the title company telling me, I'm like, this house is worth 50 grand. How are, you know what I mean?
Yes,
and then having to get educated, right, on, this is something I learned from a company called JWB, one of my, biggest clients. And I'll never forget, I was selling them the house, and to them it wasn't a big deal. They're like, oh, we'll just do this application with the city, it'll cost us $1,500, we're good. And I was like, what do you mean? Like, there's $800,000 worth of liens. And in that process, I learned, right? And that came from a connection that I made, at the
Sure.
REIA.
So
right?
it sounds like no matter what challenges you were going through, or perhaps even might have been contemplating, you did feel supported. Like you did have
Absolutely.
the resources, like you say, to lean on through your community and through your network.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes.
So you touched on it somewhat with JWB in the beginning. What kinds of deals and relationships have you cultivated, in the community through Cash Geeks, as far as?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I feel like that's a loaded question because for me, it's everything. Like my business, like the business partner that I started Cash Geeks with, I met at the REIA. The all of my investors who fund my deals, all of the inventory that I find, all of the strategy on how to buy houses. I mean, you guys were just interviewing Jeff, right?
Yeah.
Before I buy a house, for me personally, I'm calling Jeff every
Uh-huh.
time. I call Jeff. I'm like, Jeff, what do you think about this house?
Sure.
Right? For me personally.
Right.
Luckily, over the years, I've sold Jeff a lot of houses, so he'll give me some of his time. But yeah, I mean, I think a better question is like, what relationship haven't I made?
Wow.
Right at the REIA, my home and like our properties insurance, our contractors, our lenders, title companies, everything that I do in my business is from the REIA or a relationship that I made at the REIA that connected me to another
Wow.
company or whatever.
If you met someone who was on the fence about joining JaxReia, investing in real estate, or becoming a corporate sponsor of JaxReia, what advice would you give them?
It's a good question. I would say, I mean, for me, I would say immediately jump on it and then use it, right? I feel like a lot of people might join. I've done some of that, right? In my time where I pay to sponsor something and then sometimes I go, sometimes I don't, you know what I mean? But the JaxReia is one of those things that for the cost of what you're sponsoring, if you use it wisely, it can make your business, right? And I say that firsthand, right? I'm a perfect example of, at the same time that I joined the JaxReia as a member, I also joined as a corporate sponsor because I didn't have any contacts. I didn't have any buyers. I had to build my buyers list.
Right.
What better way for me to build my buyers list or make me look like a professional than to be a sponsor of the REIA? And so I became a sponsor at the same time that I became a member. And so I got everything personally through my personal membership, and then I got my business took off because of my corporate membership. And so I would say, I learned early on, everybody says it's who you know, right? And there's truth to that. But it's also who knows you. And it's hard to constantly be putting yourself out there. And by joining a sponsorship like this, what happens is once you go up in front of the room, because they're announcing the sponsors, now everybody in that room hears you as, in my example, it's Cash Geeks, we provide houses.
Sure.
So now I get a random phone call that says, hey, I was talking to somebody, I asked them where I could find deals, they said they heard you speak at the REIA, or they stopped by your table, and they said that you provide housing, can you help me out? So now the people that are constantly seeing my business and what I provide, they will be asked, who do I get insurance from? They are going to remember who they saw at the branding of the REIA. Right?
Yeah.
And
sure.
so I've been recommended by people so many times that I've never done business with, because all they know is this company has a sponsorship. I see them every month. So anytime I get asked about this resource, the only person that comes to mind is this company. So I'm going to recommend them, even if I haven't used them. And so it's just a trickle down effect. And it's just been compounding on my business year after year after year. And that's why I'm here and why I will still be at every event, still be a sponsor always. Just the money that I have invested to become a corporate sponsor or a member compared to what I have made it's just ridiculous.
It's wonderful to hear.
Yes.
Thank you. And you're a platinum sponsor, so
Yes.
that's great. Well, there you have it, folks. This is Gonzalo. Thank you so much for spending some time with us today. And if you would like to take your real estate investing to the next level, be sure to reach out to us here at JaxReia.